HOA president almost shot a farmer. He is now facing 20 years for attempted murder. The gunshot cracked through the morning fog before I even understood what was happening to me. I dropped to the gravel driveway, my heart slamming against my ribs like a fist on a door. Diana Pruitt stood on her porch, smoking pistol still raised, screaming that I had trespassed on community land. My name is Marcus Doyle, and 3 months ago I was just a farmer trying to fix a fence. I never imagined a woman with a laminated HOA badge would nearly end my life over a property line. This is the story of how petty rules turned into a felony charge and how I fought back. Before the gunshot, before the courtroom, there was just me, my land, and Sunridge Meadows Homeowners Association. I bought my 5 acres at the edge of the development specifically because I wanted peace and quiet. I raised chickens, grew tomatoes, and kept to myself, minding the fence line my grandfather built decades earlier. Diana Pruitt had been HOA president for 6 years, and everyone whispered she ruled Sunridge like a queen. My troubles started with something absurdly small: the color of paint on my toolshed door. A letter arrived demanding I repaint within 10 days or face a $200 a day fine, retroactive. I called the HOA office, explained my shed predates the HOA's founding, and was met with cold silence. Diana herself called back, her voice syrupy sweet, insisting, "Rules are rules, sweetheart, no exceptions for anyone." I repainted the shed just to avoid the fight, swallowing my frustration like a bitter pill. 2 weeks later, another letter came, this time about my overgrown grass, 3 days after I'd mowed it. I started photographing everything: my lawn, my shed, my fence, dated and time-stamped, just in case. My neighbor Evelyn Ruiz warned me quietly, "She does this to everyone who doesn't kiss her ring." Evelyn had lived in Sunridge for 12 years and had her own scars from Diana's reign of paperwork terror. She told me about the Hendersons, forced to remove a wheelchair ramp because it violated aesthetic guidelines. I began to realize this wasn't about lawns or paint, it was about control, plain and simple. Diana loved standing at podiums during meetings, gavel in hand, silencing anyone who dared to question her. At my first HOA meeting, I asked why fines seemed to target certain households more than others. The room went dead silent, and Diana's smile tightened like a wire pulled too taut. "Are you accusing me of something, Mr. Doyle?" she asked, daring me in front of 40 neighbors. I said I just wanted transparency, and she responded by tabling my request indefinitely, for review. Walking home that night, Evelyn caught up to me and said, "You just made yourself a target." I laughed it off then, not knowing how right she truly was about to become. The following week, someone reported my chicken coop as an unauthorized agricultural structure, despite being there before Diana. I requested the HOA bylaws in writing, and it took them 3 weeks to even respond. When the documents finally arrived, pages were missing, specifically the sections on grandfathered agricultural rights. I started requesting everything through certified mail now, building a paper trail no one could deny existed. Diana's assistant, a nervous young man named Toby, slipped me a folder one afternoon without a word. Inside were internal emails showing selective enforcement, fines waived for board members, doubled for critics like me. My hands shook reading them. This was no longer about paint, this was corruption hiding behind homeowner bylaws. I photographed every page and mailed copies to my own address, sealed, unopened, as a legal timestamp. Meanwhile, the fines kept coming, for my mailbox post, for a flagpole, for a garden gnome. Diana placed a lien threat on my property, demanding $4,000 in accumulated violations. I hired an attorney, a sharp woman named Rita Okafor, who read the file and simply said, "Oh, this is bad," for her. Rita explained that selective enforcement, if proven, could void every fine the HOA had levied against me. "But we need more evidence," she warned, "documents alone won't be enough to win in court." I started attending every meeting, recording audio openly, which visibly rattled Diana each time I hit record. She tried banning recording devices from meetings entirely, until Evelyn pointed out that violated state open meeting laws. Diana's face went crimson, but she had no choice, and recording stayed legal from that point on. Small victory, yes, but it told me something important: she wasn't invincible, just used to nobody fighting back. That night, my truck tires were slashed, all four, in my own driveway, no witnesses, no explanation. I filed a police report, but without proof it was Diana, the deputies could do little more than log it. Evelyn started sharing her own story with me, how Diana once had her dog reported to animal control out of spite. We began quietly comparing notes, realizing dozens of residents had similar tales of retaliation after minor disputes. A pattern was forming, one that Rita said could support a civil racketeering claim if documented properly. I started a private group chat, inviting neighbors one by one, screening carefully to avoid tipping Diana off. Within a month, 11 households had joined, each contributing photos, emails, and fine notices spanning years. Diana, sensing something was shifting, doubled down, holding emergency sessions to push through harsher new bylaws. One new rule banned public criticism of board members, which our attorney called blatantly unconstitutional overreach. I stood up at the next meeting and read the proposed rule aloud, letting the absurdity speak for itself. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and for the first time, I saw real cracks in Diana's authority. She adjourned the meeting early, visibly shaking, gavel banging harder than necessary against the wooden podium. Walking to my truck, Toby approached again, whispering, "She's scared. She knows people are talking now." I asked him why he kept helping me, and he said simply, "Because someone finally started listening." That night, I told Rita everything, and she smiled for the first time since we'd met. "We have enough for a formal complaint to the state now," she said, "but Diana won't go quietly." I filed the complaint the next morning, citing selective enforcement, financial mismanagement, and intimidation of residents. Within days, word spread through Sunridge like wildfire, and my mailbox filled with supportive notes from strangers. Diana responded by sending me a cease and desist letter, threatening defamation lawsuits over false accusations. Rita laughed reading it, saying threats like this usually meant someone was truly panicking behind closed doors. I refused to back down, publishing a redacted summary of the internal emails on the community forum. The forum exploded with comments, neighbors sharing their own stories, some dating back nearly a decade. Diana called an emergency board meeting, accusing me of harassment and demanding I be banned from HOA events. The board, to my surprise, voted against her, 3-2, the first crack in her total control. Furious, Diana stormed out, slamming the community center door hard enough to rattle the windows. That should have been a turning point toward peace, but instead, it ignited something far darker in her. Evelyn warned me to be careful, saying Diana's husband kept firearms and had a temper of his own. I brushed off the warning then, focused on paperwork, unaware how quickly things were about to escalate. A week later, my chicken coop was found destroyed, birds scattered, wire mesh torn apart deliberately. Security footage from my neighbor's camera showed a figure matching Diana's build near my property line at dawn. I brought the footage straight to the sheriff's department, demanding an official investigation into vandalism and harassment. Diana denied everything, claiming she'd been asleep, though her own doorbell camera showed her truck leaving that morning. Rita filed for a restraining order, citing the pattern of retaliation building over the past 4 months. The judge granted a temporary order, barring Diana from approaching my property or contacting me directly. Diana reacted publicly, posting on social media that I was persecuting an innocent woman doing her civic duty. Her post backfired spectacularly, as commenters flooded it with their own stories of her HOA abuses. Local news picked up the story, a small piece about HOA drama in Sunridge Meadows turns ugly. Suddenly, I wasn't just fighting alone anymore, I had cameras, reporters, and neighbors all watching closely. Diana's husband, Gary, appeared at my property one evening, demanding I drop this nonsense before things got worse. I recorded the entire conversation on my phone, his threats caught clearly on the audio file. He mentioned owning plenty of guns and knowing how to handle trespassers, a chilling foreshadowing of what came next. I handed that recording straight to Rita, who filed it immediately as evidence supporting the restraining order. The board scheduled a formal hearing to review Diana's conduct, the first real accountability process in years. Diana requested a postponement, claiming health issues, though neighbors reported seeing her jogging that same week. The hearing was pushed back 2 weeks, giving her time to rally her remaining loyal board allies. Meanwhile, more residents came forward, including a woman named Priya who'd been fined for a unauthorized birdbath. Priya's fine notice had Diana's personal signature, dated the same day as a viral neighborhood dispute video. The evidence painted a portrait of a woman using bylaws as personal weapons against anyone who displeased her. I started sleeping poorly, jumping at every sound outside, aware that tensions had crossed into something dangerous now. Evelyn insisted I install security cameras immediately, which I did, covering every angle of my property. 3 nights later, footage captured someone cutting my fence wire, face obscured, movements deliberate and unhurried. The sheriff reviewed the footage but said the image quality wasn't clear enough for a positive identification. Frustration mounted. I felt like the system protected people with money and status over ordinary homeowners like me. Rita reminded me that patience was strategy now, every incident adding weight to the eventual legal case. Karma has paperwork too, she said, and we're building the thickest file this county has ever seen. The board hearing finally arrived, packed wall to wall with residents eager to witness Diana's reckoning. Rita presented the emails, the selective fines, Priya's birdbath case and the retaliation pattern methodically, piece by piece. Diana's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the documented evidence spoke louder than any objection could silence it. Halfway through, Toby stood up unexpectedly, revealing he had recorded Diana instructing him to falsify meeting minutes. Gasps filled the room, even Diana's most loyal supporters looked stunned by the audacity of the revelation. Diana screamed that Toby was a disgruntled employee lying for attention, her composure finally shattering completely. The board voted unanimously to suspend her presidency pending a full independent audit of HOA finances. It felt like victory, but Rita cautioned me quietly, cornered animals are the most dangerous kind. I should have listened more carefully to those words, because everything was about to spiral violently out of control. 2 days after the suspension, unmarked letters appeared in mailboxes accusing me of financial fraud against the HOA. The letters, though anonymous, used phrasing eerily identical to Diana's emails, betraying her desperate authorship instantly. Rita filed a defamation counterclaim, adding another layer to the mounting legal pressure surrounding Diana's conduct. The independent audit began, uncovering discrepancies in the HOA's reserve fund totaling nearly $80,000. Diana claimed the missing funds were administrative errors, though invoices traced payments to her personal contractor's business. Her contractor, it turned out, was her own brother-in-law, hired repeatedly for work that never actually happened. The audit findings went public and the small HOA drama story suddenly became regional breaking news. Reporters camped outside the community center and Diana refused all comment, hiding behind tinted car windows. Meanwhile, my legal team pushed forward on the harassment case, gathering testimony from a dozen affected families. Diana's husband Gary escalated too, appearing uninvited at community events, glaring at me from across parking lots. One evening, Evelyn called frantically, saying Gary had been spotted near my property with something in his hand. I grabbed my phone and stepped outside cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the pre-dawn darkness ahead of me. That was the exact moment everything changed, the moment the gunshot from my opening finally makes sense. Gary had come, not Diana, but she was standing just behind him, urging him forward with whispered words. "He's trespassing, do something," she hissed, and Gary raised the pistol he'd brought from his truck. The bullet missed me by inches, striking the fence post beside my head with a deafening crack. I dropped instantly, adrenaline flooding my body, my mind screaming that this could not actually be happening. My security cameras captured everything, Diana's instructions, Gary's raised weapon, the shot and their frantic retreat afterward. Deputies arrived within minutes, responding to Evelyn's emergency call, and found me shaken but miraculously unharmed. Gary was arrested on the spot, the pistol still warm, footage already syncing to the cloud automatically. Diana tried to flee in her car, but a responding officer blocked the driveway before she could escape. "I didn't do anything, he acted alone," she insisted, though the footage told an entirely different story. Detectives reviewed the recording that same night, hearing her clearly urge Gary to do something about me. Prosecutors charged Gary with attempted murder and Diana with conspiracy and incitement, given her recorded instigation. News vans lined the street by morning and HOA president's husband shoots farmer trended across every platform. I sat in the hospital for observation, more shaken than injured, replaying the gunshot over and over. Evelyn visited, gripping my hand tightly, saying, "This is it, Marcus. This is finally going to end her." Rita arrived soon after, laptop already open, drafting an emergency civil suit alongside the pending criminal charges. "Attempted murder charges change everything," she said. "There's no HOA loophole that survives a bullet." The board voted immediately to permanently remove Diana from any HOA position, effective that same afternoon. Her remaining allies on the board resigned in the following days, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Diana's mugshot circulated online within hours, her smug expression now replaced by something closer to terror. Comments flooded in from strangers across the country, all recounting their own HOA horror stories in solidarity. I gave a brief statement to reporters, careful not to gloat, letting the evidence speak for itself instead. "I just wanted to fix a fence," I said. "I never imagined it would end like this." Behind the scenes, prosecutors uncovered more. Gary's gun wasn't even legally registered, adding illegal firearm possession charges. Diana's financial records showed she'd used HOA funds to pay her own legal retainer months before the shooting. It appeared she anticipated conflict escalating and had been preparing her defense long before that morning. This revelation painted her not as a panicked bystander, but as someone who premeditated the confrontation entirely. Rita called it the twist that seals her fate, evidence of calculated intent rather than spontaneous fear. The grand jury convened within 2 weeks, reviewing testimony, footage and financial records methodically and thoroughly. Diana's attorney argued self-defense on Gary's behalf, claiming I had menaced them near their property line. But my cameras clearly showed I was standing entirely within my own fence, unarmed, simply checking a noise. The prosecution played the audio recording in full, her voice unmistakably commanding Gary to do something. Jurors visibly winced at the recording and Diana's attorney requested a recess to regroup the defense strategy. During the recess, another resident came forward, a woman claiming Diana once threatened her similarly, years earlier. That incident had never been reported, out of fear, but now she felt safe enough to speak. Her testimony established a pattern of violent intimidation stretching back further than anyone had previously realized. The grand jury indicted both Gary and Diana, formal charges including attempted murder and criminal conspiracy. Diana's bail was set unusually high, given flight risk concerns after her earlier attempt to drive away. Gary, facing the harsher weapon-related charges, remained held without bail pending his upcoming arraignment hearing. Sunridge Meadows felt different overnight, quieter, but also lighter, as if a great weight had finally lifted. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now waved warmly, gathering on porches to discuss the unfolding case. Evelyn organized a small community dinner, calling it a celebration of getting our neighborhood back. I attended reluctantly, still processing everything, but the warmth of genuine community support meant more than I expected. Toby, the former assistant, was offered witness protection status due to threats he'd received for testifying. He declined protection but accepted a new job in another county, grateful to finally be free of Diana. Priya's birdbath fine was formally reversed, along with dozens of other retaliatory fines uncovered during the audit. The HOA refunded nearly $40,000 in wrongful fines to affected residents over the following month. A new interim board formed, promising transparency, open meetings and an end to selective rule enforcement. I was asked to join the board myself, an offer I accepted cautiously, wanting real change to last. Meanwhile, Diana's defense attempted a new angle, claiming diminished capacity due to stress-induced psychological breakdown. Prosecutors countered with her calculated financial preparations, proving she'd planned her legal defense before the shooting occurred. The judge denied the diminished capacity motion, ruling the evidence showed premeditation, not sudden mental collapse. Media coverage intensified as the trial date approached, with true crime podcasts dissecting every detail of the case. I received messages from strangers nationwide, some sharing eerily similar stories of HOA overreach turning dangerous. One woman in another state credited my case with giving her courage to finally report her own HOA president. It struck me then how isolated victims of these small tyrannies often feel, believing no one would listen. Rita reminded me the case was setting legal precedent, potentially affecting HOA liability laws statewide going forward. Diana's trial finally began on a cold Tuesday morning, courtroom packed with reporters, neighbors and legal observers. The prosecution opened with the security footage, silence falling over the room as the gunshot echoed through speakers. Diana sat rigid at the defense table, no longer wearing her signature confident smirk from HOA meetings. Witnesses testified one by one: Evelyn, Toby, Priya, myself, each account reinforcing a clear pattern of abuse. The defense tried discrediting Toby, calling him a bitter employee, but his recorded evidence remained unshaken and clear. On cross-examination, Diana's own words from the falsified minutes recording condemned her further, undeniable and self-incriminating. Gary's attorney attempted a separate trial severance, arguing his actions shouldn't be tied to Diana's alleged incitement. The judge denied the motion, ruling the conspiracy charge required both defendants' actions be examined together. Day 3 brought the audio recording again, played slowly this time, every word analyzed by expert testimony. A forensic linguist confirmed Diana's tone carried clear command intent, not mere panic or startled reaction. The jury took careful notes and I noticed several glancing toward Diana with expressions of quiet disbelief. During recess, Diana's own daughter approached me outside the courthouse, apologizing quietly for her mother's actions. She wasn't always like this, her daughter said. Power changed her, slowly, over so many years. I appreciated her honesty but couldn't offer forgiveness yet, still processing the trauma of that gunshot morning. Closing arguments arrived after 8 days of testimony, the prosecution methodically connecting every piece of evidence. This wasn't panic, the prosecutor said, this was a woman who believed the rules didn't apply to her. The defense argued reasonable doubt, but even their own witnesses seemed unconvinced by their strained final arguments. The jury deliberated for nearly 11 hours, tension in Sunridge Meadows thick enough to feel physically. Evelyn and I waited together at the courthouse, coffee going cold, nerves frayed from the agonizing wait. Finally, word came, the jury had reached a verdict and everyone rushed back into the courtroom. The foreperson stood, reading slowly, each word landing like another nail into the case's final conclusion. Gary was found guilty of attempted murder and illegal firearm possession, facing a mandatory minimum sentence ahead. Diana was found guilty of criminal conspiracy and incitement to commit violence, alongside embezzlement charges from the audit. The courtroom erupted, some in tears, others simply staring in stunned silence at the verdict's weight. Diana's face crumpled for the first time I'd ever seen, all her practiced composure finally collapsing entirely. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later, giving both sides time to prepare final statements for the judge. In the interim, the civil suit against the HOA and Diana personally moved forward through negotiation. Rita secured a settlement covering my medical costs, property damage and significant compensation for emotional distress. Other affected residents joined a class action, seeking restitution for years of documented selective enforcement and fines. The HOA's insurance carrier balked initially, but mounting evidence forced a substantial settlement to avoid further exposure. Sentencing day arrived, courtroom once again full, reporters lining the back wall with cameras ready. Gary received 20 years for attempted murder, the mandatory firearm enhancement adding significant additional time to his sentence. He showed no expression as the sentence was read, perhaps finally understanding the weight of that single trigger pull. Diana's sentencing followed immediately after, the judge citing her position of trust as an aggravating factor. You used community rules as weapons, the judge said, and when rules failed, you turned to violence. Diana received 15 years for conspiracy and incitement, plus additional time for embezzlement uncovered in the audit. She was led away in handcuffs, her HOA badge confiscated months earlier now feeling symbolically final. I watched her go, expecting triumphant relief, but instead feeling only a heavy, complicated exhaustion settle over me. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn hugged me tightly, whispering, "It's over, Marcus. You did it. We did it." Reporters swarmed asking for comment, but I simply said justice had been served, nothing more needed saying. That night, I finally slept soundly for the first time in months, the weight of fear finally lifting. The Sunridge Meadows HOA elected an entirely new board within weeks, Evelyn among the newly chosen members. New bylaws were drafted with strict transparency requirements, term limits, and independent financial oversight going forward. My chicken coop was rebuilt, this time with reinforced fencing, though I doubted I'd need it anymore. Priya planted a new birdbath proudly in her front yard, a small but meaningful act of quiet defiance. Toby sent a letter from his new town, thanking me for giving him courage he never knew he had. The class action settlement funds arrived months later, providing real relief to families who'd suffered years of retaliation. I used part of my settlement to plant a proper garden, something Diana would have surely tried to fine. Local journalists wrote a follow-up piece calling Sunridge Meadows a case study in HOA accountability reform. State legislators cited our case while debating new laws limiting HOA fine authority and enforcement discretion. I testified before a legislative committee, sharing our story to support stronger protections for homeowners statewide. The bill passed months later, unofficially nicknamed the Sunridge Act, by local media covering its origins. Diana appealed her sentence from prison, but the appellate court upheld the conviction, citing overwhelming recorded evidence. Gary's appeal similarly failed, the security footage leaving no reasonable room for any alternative interpretation. I visited the old fence post once, the bullet holes still visible, a quiet reminder of how close I came. Evelyn joked that we should mount it on a plaque, Sunridge Meadows, where karma finally got paperwork right. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time since this whole ordeal had begun so many months earlier. The community held an annual Neighbors' Day now, celebrating transparency and the fight that had brought them together. I still farm my 5 acres, still mind my fence line, but no longer fear a knock at dawn. Sometimes I think about Diana, alone now, stripped of every title and every ounce of borrowed power. Power built on fear always collapses eventually, and Sunridge Meadows finally proved that truth beyond any doubt. Justice, once slow and buried under paperwork, arrived louder than any gunshot ever could, final and complete.